bit of rush of it in the last meeting. So, but moving on to the agenda before us, the first item before us is any apologies for absence?
Councillor Nicola Matthews.
Good one, are we? Yeah. Okay. No others? We're all here. Yeah. Good. Item 2, any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? Are there any? No. No, none at all. Good. Any items for deferral or withdrawal in them?
No, Chair.
Nothing there. Oh.
Minutes on, Chair.
So, oh, crikey, yeah, sorry, it's missing. There's no, yeah. Right, we'll go back to the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record then. If we go to pages 1 to 5. Thanks, Gareth. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. 4. And 5. Somebody moves the full record, please. Thank you. Yeah, I missed that. There's no number against it. No. Yeah, that's all right. There's no items for deferral or withdrawal. And then we move on to item 5 then, is the application to add footpaths at Carmel Road in Winchwen. So what do you think, Chris? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll summarise the report, if that's okay. The application was received in 2006 to record a number of public footpaths on land that's mostly owned by Swansea Council to the north of Carmel Road, Winchwen. 2 other areas of land under private ownership are also affected, one of which is unregistered. The application was made in response to a proposal to build a rugby stadium on the land. The application was submitted with supporting evidence from 34 members of the public detailing the use of the claimed routes, and a summary of the user evidence contained in the forms can be seen in Appendix 5. Map 1 on page 8 shows the routes on the evidence forms supplied by the claimants. The evidence for the application, the site visit by the council was made in 2007 and again more recently. The routes that were claimed at the time provide evidence that the routes were in use at the time. The council requested interviews with 34 of the people who submitted evidence, but only 9 of the 34 people agreed to be interviewed. 7 of the claimants did not submit plans, or were claiming existing public footpaths, and these claimants weren't interviewed either, so we weren't able to include their evidence because we don't know what their evidence actually is. Of the 27 remaining claimants, 1 has subsequently withdrawn their support for the application, and therefore their use can't be, their evidence can't be considered. So there are evidence from 26 claimants in total, but we're unable to verify evidence from 17 of the claimants at interview, so we should give a lower weighting to their evidence because we haven't been able to test it. So we only have good evidence from 9 of the claimants. In 2021, all of the claimants were written to twice, but only 2 of the claimants responded. One of whom, as I already stated, no longer supports application. And so we've actually got only 1 claimant still supporting the application. Whilst it appears that there were routes being used by walkers at the time of the application in 2006, there needs to be adequate evidence that these routes were being used by the public during the 20-year period between 1986 and 2006. As the numbers of claimants that were interviewed using each route is rather small, and as nearly all of the claimants live in one street, there is a good case that the claimants do not represent the public. Therefore, the evidence of public use does not appear to be adequate to record the public footpaths claimed. Consideration must also be given to the lack of recent use of the claimed routes and the poor response to requests to the claimants for continued support to the application. Should the council decide to make a modification order on the basis of the evidence available, it is likely that the order will be challenged. In such a situation, the council will be in a weak position to defend the order, as the order would rely on support from the claimants, which no longer appears to be forthcoming. The lack of response from the claimants may be due to the length of time since the evidence for this application was submitted to the council, which is 16 years. As it is possible some claimants may have moved away or even passed away. However, since the proposal to develop the site as a rugby stadium has lapsed, it appears that interest in this application has waned, as has interest in walking almost all of the routes claimed on the application, as shown by the recent site visit and aerial photographs. It should also be noted that the claimed route DEF, which appeared to have the most use in 2007, has effectively been replaced by a new active travel route, which was built 4 years ago. So the recommendation is to refuse the application on the basis of lack of evidence.
Thank you very much, Chris. Any member wish to speak? No? Perhaps as, oh, sorry, did you? No, not going to put your hand up, no? Okay. No, as, well, one of the local members there, and thank you for your presentation, Chris. As one of the local members there, I mean, knowing the history behind this application and so on. And, well, it's unfortunate that the interest has waned. And so there, as the officer says, you wouldn't be able to substantiate the claim. So I would support the recommendation there. Thank you. You can see the recommendation on page 6. That the council refuses the application on the grounds there's insufficient evidence that the claimed routes are public. Thank you. So we can take a vote on that, and please, Clarence.
Yeah. Councillor Meyer Baker. Peter Black. 4. Phil Downing. 4. Alan Jeffrey. 4. Mary Jones. 4. Mike Lewis. 4. Richard Lewis. 4. Mark Tribe. 4. Mike White. 4. Andrew Williams. 4. Paul Lloyd.
4.
It's unanimous 11-4.
Thank you very much. That's carried then. Okay. So moving on to the next item, then we move on to item 6, and the first item there is you find on page 41 is the waterfront, and that's yours, Davia. Thank you.
So application plot DB NSA1 Swansea waterfront reserve matters application for 26 reserve residential affordable apartments effectively. So first slide, as you can see on presentation, the site is outlined in red, and essentially it's located on the southern side of Langdon Road, and then butts the promenade to Prince of Wales Dock, which obviously is the large expanse of water in the foreground. Plot D9B of the SA1 outlines Swansea master plan. So application is currently a cleared site. It forms development plateau, and it's about 0.5 hectares. Graded site, so it's a fall basically from Langdon Road down to Prince of Wales Dock, and it's a fall approximately about 3 meters across the site effectively. So the site adjacent is the site, as you probably will be aware, of the proposed park in SA1. And the plot at the western end then has already been given reserve matters consent for a residential apartment block, which is D5A. So the reserve matters application sought 26 residential apartments comprises 2 walk-up units on Langdon Road and ground floor apartment, 2 duplex apartments above, and then the rest are common access apartment blocks, effectively consisting of a mixture of 1 bed, 2 beds, and 3 beds duplex units. Next slide, Ian, please. So you can just see the layout. There's a better plan in a minute. You can see obviously the red line, which outlines the site at that eastern plot. So the general concept is basically it's a 3 to 4 story development with a small component of 5 stories. So the general layout concept is to respond to the recently built and approved sort of courtyard developments along Langdon Road. So it's got frontage development to Langdon Road, access from Langdon Road, and obviously it's got a strong then facade to the park to the west, and obviously the frontage along the promenade to Prince of Wales Dock. Primary materials will comprise of face brickwork or brick slip cladding, grey windows, and some colour-coded railings and screening. So within the planning layout then, we've got 26 apartments with a total of 21 car parking spaces, and we'll address that in a minute. So next slide, please, Ian. So this is an extract from the SA1 master plan. Basically what that shows is land allocations, and what it shows is plot D9B as an allocation for residential development. And the next slide, Ian, please. Which then, this is the same master plan, and this is an indicative story height, and the plot basically indicates that I go up to 5 stories in height. So the development for residential development up to 5 stories is obviously in accordance with the parameters per the master plan. So the site obviously is part of the Fableweg Corridor Strategic Development Area of SA1, mixed use area for obviously residential, commercial, and employment uses. And as I say, the policy allows for SA1, which refers to the master plan linked to existing planning consent, which is outlined permission from 2015, and it outlines existing capacities and plots for various land uses. So D9B is as designated for residential, establishes the principle and the scale of development of up to 5 stories. Therefore, the site is in accordance with the outline permission for residential development and in terms of the general use, layout and scale of development. So, quite a contentious application. There's lots of objections outlined in the report. Some of them I'll address at this stage. They refer to questioning the validity of the Reserve Matters application. Advice taken from our legal officer on this is that under the Planning Act, Reserve Matters application must be made within a period specified with the time limit. In this case, the application, the outline application requires Reserve Matters to be submitted before the expiry of the 13th of May 2022, whereas this application was actually received on the 11th of May 2022. So it was submitted before the expiry, effectively, of the condition of the outline permission. Well, therefore, its Reserve Matters application is valid. And the other main objection is that the SA1 master plan has not been reviewed since the 2015 approval, which is true, but that remains the outline permission in place, and it does not invalidate the Reserve Matters application. So we'll move on to the placemaking guidelines. So next slide, please, Ian. So you can see there's a more detailed plan. So you can see the blue is obviously the water, Prince of Wales Dock. The green obviously is the park to be. So you can see the colour then obviously are the different elements of the residential components. So the scheme's obviously got the access from Langdon Road, and then obviously outlined around a courtyard of the parking, bin storage, cycling facilities, etc. So obviously it gives a frontage onto Langdon Road, frontage onto the park, and obviously a frontage onto Prince of Wales Dock. The land then further to the east obviously is already been developed several years ago, and that's a similar type of courtyard development. So the application has been considered against the placemaking guidance, the residential design guide, outlined in detail in the report. Provides important guidance for obviously consideration of the application. and together with the comments from the placemaking officer as well. So the site is a sustainable location within SA1 development. Lots of facilities within walking distance. Scheme has an urban density appropriate for this dockside location, and as we say, is in accordance with the guidance of the SA1 master plan. So it's got positive integration with the public open space, strong active frontages, the scale of between 3, predominantly 4, small element of 5-story is in accordance with the parameters and is appropriate for this location. So good, robust brick finishes, mirroring, referencing the heritage buildings within SA1 and the master plan design code as well. All the apartments have balconies or terraces, so they've got access to outdoor amenity space, as well as obviously having a potential aspect to the park as well, which will be delivered this year, hopefully. All apartments will have dual aspects, a good outlook for the residents and natural surveillance of the external areas. Pedestrian route through the courtyard will prevent public access, but as you can see, there is a new public access proposed north to south, linking at the edge of the park, linking Langton Road onto the promenade. Objections are being made that the development will have an impact on habitable room windows, which are on the opposite side of Langton Road, which is a distance of approximately 19 meters. In ideal circumstances, 21 meters, but the design guide does allow, where you've got development across a highway, it does allow for a flexible application of that guideline. And therefore, in this case, it's in accordance with similar developments in SA1 and are considered to be appropriate. Objections also to the building heights, the development, as I say, they've in accordance with the SA1 master plan, and it's not considered to have any adverse effects. So if you go to the next slide, please, Ian. So obviously these are the elevation drawings. The top one effectively is the one overlooking the park. And then the middle elevation is, so you can see the variation then of the 3 or 4 stories. The 5-story element is the bit towards down at the bottom end of the gradient, if you like. The middle section is an internal elevation, and then the bottom elevation is the one overlooking the Prince of Wales Dock. So you can see the change in elevation from height down from 5-story down to 4 down to 3 stories, which joins the existing development to the east of the development. And then you've got some coloured elements, which obviously breaks up some interest, but obviously they will be controlled through the planning condition. And the next slide, please, Ian. So again, so you've got the elevation at the top, which is basically the top one, which is the one overlooking Langton Road. So obviously you can see the access allows permeability into the development, obviously. And then you've got the middle one again, which is an internal elevation, and then the section through it at the bottom of the site. And the next elevation, Ian. Again, obviously, as you can see, some from different components of the scheme, some different elements. And then the next one. Yeah, so we'll go through those right to the end. So those are the CGIs. So highways, parking issues. Access has been amended. So we've got a good 6-meter clear access into the site with pavements either side. Good access for fire tenders, emergency vehicles, etc. No objections from highways. As I say, good visibility then onto Langton Road. As I say, car parking, 26 units, 21 spaces. But what I will point out, as we've done on previous schemes in SA1, the council's car parking guidelines are now considered to be a document which has limited weight in decision making. This is based on the fact that there's been superseded to some extent in the evolution of planning policy, both at Future Wales, which has development plan status, planning policy Wales, and also through the LDP. So the LDP will continue to facilitate applications in urban areas with less car parking spaces in sustainable locations like this. So there is good evidence, I think, to justify relaxation of the parking guidelines in this sustainable location. It's in accordance with similar developments already granted in SA1, as a reference to the plot on D5B, which had 43 units and 29 car parking spaces, which was approved a couple of years ago. I also outlined that this is managed by Coastal Housing. They have submitted a framework parking management plan, which will control the allocation of parking within the development, and hopefully will prevent overspill parking on public highway. But I would outline, obviously, Langdon Road is obviously well protected by traffic regulation orders, so which prevents any overspill parking on Langdon Road, and therefore would not be an issue which would be detrimental to highway safety. Other issues outlined in the report: drainage, flood risk. So the development is set at the 7.5 metres minimum, which accords with the outline permission to address the flood risk across the site. Actually extends from 7.5 down on Prince of Wales Dock up to 10.5 on Langdon Road, as we said, due to the difference in levels across the site. Issues about contamination, they're all addressed within the outline permission. The site has previously been considered appropriate for residential development under the outline permission. So therefore, in conclusion, the site is allocated for housing within the SA1 master plan, and it's also in accordance, moreover, for the development plan as well for the area, which supports a mixed-use area and in accordance with the master plan for residential development. Full provision of affordable housing, albeit that there is a 106 requirement, which is 10%, which is in accordance with the outline permission. High efficient energy homes.
Okay, thank you. Right. A long adjournment, my apologies. Thank you, Dave, for your presentation. And we have speakers now wish to address us. The first one is Steve Jones, is as an objector. Thank you.
Local objectors and as resident director of the Oceans Reach Management Company, whose members will be severely affected by this development. The council sets targets and provides funding for social housing. To avoid any perception of bias or conflict of interest when considering such applications, it is vital that planning policies and guidelines are applied rigorously. Unfortunately, that does not appear to be the case here. The planning officer's report fails to include several material objections. If the committee has not been able to consider these in full, then they do not have a full picture to base any decision on. The officer claims the master plan is still valid. This misses a fundamental point. The master plan clearly states it must be reviewed and approved every 2 years. This has never happened. If this requirement can be dismissed, then the whole master plan is undermined. As a result, no valid master plan exists. Thus, this is an application in principle, not a reserved matter, and cannot proceed. But if it is, the SPG states that development should be located at least 21 metres apart to achieve acceptable levels of privacy. It's 19 metres here by the officer's own admission. The SPG also highlights potential loss of amenity arising from overlooking balcony areas. The proposed development will directly overlook balconies opposite, which are residents' only private outdoor areas. Moreover, upper floor residents will overlook from an elevated position into living rooms and bedrooms. Something you would like? Harbour Quay and D5B, which have also been cited, are opposite commercial buildings, so have no relevance here. These facts alone breach the right to peaceful enjoyment of properties under the Human Rights Act. I wrote to Highways on 12th of November disputing the sustainability index calculation and didn't receive any reply. It was also questioned in an objection which has not been referenced in the report. Under the SPG, parking can only be reduced from the standard if the sustainability index is 7 or more. The applicant awarded themselves 9. This requires 2 public facilities within 400 metres. Of the 3 listed, one is a private hospital, the other is a private gym. Neither are universally accessible. There must be bus stops within 400 metres with services every 20 minutes between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The only stops within 400 metres can only be accessed via steep steps, making them unusable by anyone with mobility issues. Bus services are often more than 20 minutes apart, particularly outside university term time and on Sundays. I calculate the sustainability index to be as low as 2. This means 59 spaces would be required to meet the SPG requirement. Only 21 are planned. Justifications are a general planning requirement to reduce car use, little weight being given to the SPG, 2011 census data indicating a reduced car ownership in social housing, and a parking management plan. Unfortunately, ideology rarely survives contact with the real world. The SPG is the only guidance in existence. The planning officer has no right to ignore it unilaterally. Over 80% of journeys to work in Wales are by car. The report suggests employment opportunities locally and public transport investment make car ownership unnecessary. Public transport in Swansea is reducing and unreliable. Without a car, working people can only access jobs within walking or cycling distance or during the hours of public transport. No shift work, no unsocial hours. Those with mobility issues risk virtual imprisonment in their homes. Effectively, government would be giving a landlord the power to restrict tenants' access to employment opportunities and family life. This is morally and legally unacceptable. I live opposite D9B, and while I walk a lot, I can assure you I still need a car. Since 2011, access to private vehicles has increased significantly. Restricting parking for those in social housing is discrimination on socio-economic grounds, which is a breach of the HRA and the Future Wales Act. The UK economy is heavily dependent on private vehicles. Without them, a prosperous Wales, another aim of the Future Wales Act, is unachievable. Lack of parking causes friction within communities. Oceans Reach conforms just to the sustainability SPG, but there are still regular disputes over parking. I dealt with one this morning. Without adequate parking, community cohesion, another target of the Future Wales Act, will never be achieved here, and rationing will only cause disputes. Who decides and on what basis? Nobody involved in this decision who relies on a private vehicle should have the right to prevent their fellow citizens from owning one. In fact, the planning officer supports my case. Under Planning Policy Wales 4.150, he states, it is unlikely that not all future residents will have need of a private car. The double negative means they will need a car. I pointed this out at the meeting for D5B. It can't be an error, as I'm assured that speakers' comments in these meetings are always documented. If it is a repeated error, then the report is little more than a cut and paste job and is not fit for purpose. If this application is approved, despite all common sense, the developer must provide details of construction, parking, access and material storage. Any such provision must not be allowed on the adjacent planning community park. Coastal have already delayed this by using it when working on Harbour Quay. Residents have been promised this park since 2018. Nothing can be allowed to delay it further. I'm happy to take any questions.
For the applicant, Mr. James Scarborough. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and thank you to the officers for all their work on the application before you. This planning application is, of course, recommended for approval, and given the case officer's detailed presentation, I'll keep my speech relatively brief. The report before you sets a detailed officer's assessment, which has found the development to be compatible with the policies of the LPP, not least as the site is located within the SA1 development area, which benefits from outline plan permission for mixed-use development. The proposals are fully compliant with the terms and parameters of the outline permission and the associated approved master plan and design code. Moreover, the proposals are for 100% affordable housing scheme, which will make a valuable contribution to the identified housing requirement within the planned period. The Housing and Neighbouring Officer has conveyed full support for the scheme accordingly. To support the application before you, extensive assessment work was carried out and submitted by the applicant and the wider design team to ensure that a well-designed and thought-out proposal is presented. Through extensive consultation with both internal and external consultees, the scheme has been amended, taking into account these comments received, and as a result is found to be acceptable in all respects, including design and visual landscape effects, ecology, drainage, and highways, subject to the appropriate conditions. There have been no technical objections raised by statutory consultees towards the proposal. Extensive dialogue has been held with officers to arrive at the high-quality scheme before you. The density and layout of the proposed development has been carefully considered and responds to the site and its context within the SA1 development area. The design of the development protects neighbouring amenity as well as ensuring appropriate residential amenity for future occupiers. The site relates well to its surroundings through active frontages and architectural references to the character and appearance of the area. Soft landscaping and drainage are integrated into the proposals, providing a significant betterment in terms of the site's contribution to the green infrastructure network and placemaking. Indeed, the placemaking officer deemed all aspects of the proposals acceptable and recommends approval in terms of placemaking accordingly. The scheme was also presented to the Expert and Impartial Design Commission for Wales panel, whereby the feedback provided has informed the design proposals that form part of the application presented before you. The proposal will deliver energy-efficient homes which will make use of renewable and sustainable energy sources, including solar panels and ground source heat pumps. In respect to highways, and as conveyed by your officers today, the Highway Authority do not object to the proposed development. The proposed access into the site has been assessed as acceptable by officers in that it will allow suitable access for vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists. With regards to parking provision, as confirmed by officers, the number of spaces proposed are suitable given the site's inherent and sustainable location and the nature of the development. Moreover, the application is supported by a framework parking management plan detailing how the level of parking will be controlled by the applicant. Accordingly, it is considered that the proposal is acceptable from a highways perspective and is confirmed by highways officers. To conclude, and in line with the officers' conclusions, the development is in accordance with the aims and objectives of both local and national planning policy. If approved, the scheme would contribute towards much needed affordable housing in a sustainable location and deliver an allocated site in the adopted LDP. On this basis, planning officers and statutory consultees have found that the scheme and its detail is suitable and acceptable in all respects, and the application is recommended for approval accordingly. I would therefore respectfully urge members to support the recommendation of your officers. Thank you very much for your time.
Again, and then ward members here now. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go over, I suppose it's going back over my original comment, my original objections, and some of the stuff that's in the report that I think has been missed and skipped over. So I'll start with flood risk. On page 50 of the planning report, at the bottom, the final paragraph from, or the penultimate paragraph from Natural Resources Wales, and their last sentence: we cannot offer an informed response on flood risk without a submission of a suitably updated FCA. What they're saying in the previous paragraphs is that the FCA is, they requested it for it to be updated, but it doesn't reflect the up-to-date tidal the up-to-date tidal situation in the area, and that there is therefore a flood risk. I accept, as the waterfront member, that there is an element of flood risk within waterfront's mere existence. However, if Natural Resources Wales are asking for an update based on their tidal risk, then why has that not been provided? That seems to me to be an extremely important part of this, particularly when you're building in such a low area, close to sea level. But I'll move on to other comments. I think the scale of the application is large, and I met with Coastal, now Beacon, a year ago, and at that point a number of residents suggested that the application was too high, and they were consulting with residents. So the suggestion that residents have been listened to and been consulted on is not necessarily wholly the case, because residents have been saying for a very long time, given that this application came through in 2022, that they were concerned about the overall scale of this development. I also take issue with comments about the distance from of the development from the other houses across the road on Langdon Road. Yes, it's 21. It's not 21 meters. It's 19 meters, and we might wish to apply what seems to be the SA1 planning policy, which is do as we will. But irrelevant of that, is that the development is not like any other development along Langdon Road. The only two blocks of flats on Langdon Road are Harbour Quay and the previous development that was approved. Both of them are opposite commercial sites. They are not opposite people's homes, and that is a fundamental difference. That if you drive down Langdon Road and on the maps you saw from the point of the last development that this committee approved, every single property is a home, not a commercial property, and that is the fundamental difference. So I feel it is misleading to suggest that this development is in line with everything else that has been approved in SA1, because that is just simply not the case. And therefore the scale of it will reduce light and will reduce people's residents' privacy, and I think the committee needs to consider very hard about that. I'll go on to the SA1 master plan. The SA1, we are cherry picking the SA1 master plan based on the sizes of the developments. It is absolutely the case that this plot has got earmarked for 5 stories. But it is not the case that the rest of the SA1 plan has been followed. If you look at the SA1 plan very, very closely, there are meant to be blocks of flats along Langdon Road, and that was not ever done. What was done was there was a series of houses done along Langdon Road at this point. So cherry picking that one small part of the SA1 master plan and going, that's what it's okay, it's 5 floors, when we haven't followed it on the other side of the road is fundamentally important to the application. We can't cherry pick the SA1 master plan. I personally think, and I have written to planning on a number of occasions suggesting that the SA1 master plan needs to be updated, reflecting the developments that have already happened in the area, because we're no longer following it the way that is outlined. And I think the parking issues is really important. It is the case that there are traffic regulation orders on Langdon Road, and therefore there are not parking issues on Langdon Road. However, on the entrance to Emily Court, on the entrance to the Starling Street and Swallow's the other side, Starling Street and all the others, you will often find cars parked on the highway. Within the report itself, it's suggesting that the pavement's not wide enough. Where do we think those cars are going to park? 1.5 meters suggests that it is wide enough for wheelchair users and prams. Where are those cars going to park if there isn't adequate parking? We are trying to shoehorn too many homes into a very small space. I am not opposed to large-scale developments. There are plenty of developments on the space on the other side of Prince of Wales Dock that is yet to be done. They've already got all their amenities, but they haven't been dealt with. We could have done something smaller here and something larger on the other side of Prince of Wales Dock. I also take issue with the suggestion that it reflects the heritage of the site. That the images that we saw earlier are nothing like the heritage of the site. I'm not aware of any heritage building that are in bright yellow and bright red like anywhere else. If you look at the heritage buildings in the area, J Shed, nothing like J Shed. All the other to suggest that it's got some sort of heritage link to what was on around Prince of Wales Dock historically, I think is frankly unfair. So I would suggest that this application needs to be reconsidered, that it needs to be smaller, and that it needs to reflect the needs of the area and consider all the other land that is available within SA1 where you could do something of this scale. In fact, you could do something of a much more significant scale and meet the housing needs that Swansea has. Thank you.
So much. Okay, thanks. Right, any members wish to speak first? Oh, Councillor Black.
To do this first one. Okay, thank you, Chair. I put both mics on, so my main concern with this is very similar to the last application we dealt with in this area, namely to do with parking. If the master plan is out of date and we can carry on anyway, then that's one thing. But then to say that the parking is out of date and it's out of date, but that's okay. We're going to ignore it and carry on. It's not consistent. I know both out of date, and you ignore both of them, or they're both, or you carry on. You take cognizance to both of them. You can't just do one thing and one with the other. And it just seems to me that the major issue in SA1 and the Marina, for that matter, is the parking. There's huge number of developments there with inadequate parking. There's virtually no parking for visitors. And people, the assumption that people will move in there and maybe not use cars because of they use active travel. I think it's already been disproved by the residents who just pointed out that how inconvenient it is in terms of using buses or other active travel matters to get around in that area. So it just seemed to me that we have an application in front of us which is out of scale, which doesn't have adequate parking facilities, and therefore, for that reason, I feel unable to support it.
Another member? Sure. For a couple of issues there, when David.
So I have indicated, Chair.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah. Can I say, if you've got two mics on, it's terribly echoey.
We can't
Maybe
hear you,
one
Councillor
isn't
Jones.
I'm not sure if it carried on after we lost the sound, but I was trying to look at the parking and I couldn't see if it was marked out for any disabled spaces, and if there is, how many are there, and what kind of accessibility is it then from them to gain access to properties? Because we've had this issue before, that they've had ramps and things to go up. Sorry, I seem to be... Hope you could understand what I said.
Yeah, nobody else on the
Thank you. Sunday.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a few issues to address. Status to the master plan is yes, admittedly, there is a requirement in the 2015 outline.
Sorry, can't hear a thing.
Okay, I'll start again, yeah. So just to reiterate, obviously, yes, the master plan dates from the 2015 permission for SA1. It hasn't been reviewed. It was a condition of the outline that it should be reviewed, but yes, that hasn't happened. But just because it hasn't been reviewed, it still provides guidance for consideration of this application. So as a reserved matters, it is considered to be valid in accordance with that guidance. So it still has a status. So just because it hasn't been reviewed, the outline permission is still valid as such in that it's been implemented. There is an issue because the timescale for further reserved matters can't be submitted. That's expired. But the outline permission is essentially the permission in place on the scheme. There is also, I think, a condition in the outline permission where any deviation from the master plan is permissible, but then that has to be considered against development plan policy. So the development plan policy for SA1 is the strategic development application allocation for the Fabian Way corridor, which SA1 is a part of, which essentially refers to a mixed-use development in SA1. Obviously, you've got a combination then of residential, commercial, and leisure development. So the permission, the application is in accordance A, with the master plan, and B, with development plan policy. So I think that's important to have regard to. Yeah, the car parking SPG I'll refer to as well. So it's not defunct. It's still in place, but it has limited weight. Now that's a position not to just regard for this application. That obviously is a policy position against every application within the county, and that's obviously been agreed position with a strategic policy team and at a management level. So because we have an emerging planning permission policy with Future Wales, Planning Policy Wales, and obviously the parking guidelines date from 2012. So they have weights, but they have limited weights. So what they don't have regard to is more an up-to-date planning policy. So therefore, that's where we are applying a flexibility of the standards in this type of sustainable location for parking, which obviously achieves a higher level or denser development, if you like, in sustainable locations. There's a question about NRW, the flood risk. Essentially, we're in a position where we are still adhering to the 2004 TAN 15. Now, there is a consultation out. It's been out for a number of years. It hasn't been updated from 2021, and it refers to the flood maps. Now, we haven't received an updated FCA. So the 7.5 meter figure is based on the FCA which accompanied the 2015 application, which was obviously in regard to the flood risk across SA1. So because this is a reserve matters, and essentially it's not a planning application, so it's a reserve matters to the outline permission. So therefore, the flood risk issue has already been assessed, if you like, under the 2015 permission, and that's our base position effectively, and therefore there hasn't been a requirement to update the FCA accordingly. Scale has been mentioned, as I say. There is an element. I understand the concerns of neighbours opposite. Going back to the master plan, it does have a recommendation on this plot of 5 stories. The development right adjacent to the development is only 4 stories, and that's an element. The access allows for permeability, if you like, through the development, and the other component of it reduces to 3-story. So I don't agree that the scale is undue, and it's appropriate for this location, and it's in keeping with the other developments along London Road. There is reference to the separation distance. So we have in the guidelines 21 meter habitable room separation distance. That's essentially a back-to-back scenario for a suburban residential development. So obviously you have your rear garden 10 meters, rear garden 10 meters, 10.5 meters. So in an ideal scenario, you have 21 meters across rear gardens. So across a street development like this, that guidance doesn't necessarily apply. And that's stated in the residential design guidance. So there is flexibility how we apply that. And in this urban location, I think there is a justification to allow relaxation of that type of standard. Councillor Jones asked about car parking. There are 2 disabled car parking spaces in the courtyard. I think I've addressed most of the notes I've made, but by all means, come back to me.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Steve. And sorry, John.
Thank you, Chair. Just add a couple of points really to what the officers have said. Just to confirm for members, the master plan is still valid. It is still a valid planning consent, although it hasn't been updated after 2 years as required. It is still valid in law. There hasn't been any legal challenge to say that it isn't valid, and as far as I'm concerned, it is still valid. The reserved matters application was received within time because that was one of the objectors' comments, although it was near the end of the period where it could be submitted. It was still submitted within time, so the application is valid. And as you can see from your report, it complies with national policy, with local policy, and with our placemaking team's guidance. So there haven't been any statutory objections to the application. And the other further thing I would say is on the parking, the supplementary planning guidance is guidance. It is not, that isn't law. So that should always be remembered as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, no, it can't be, sorry. No, sorry, I'm sorry, sir. Yeah. I understand.
For this information.
Sorry. No, yes, there has been a letter, and that was addressed, but there hasn't been a legal challenge to the planning consent, is what I'm saying, which there hasn't been. Thank you.
Correct, thank you. Anyway, there's no other member wish to speak. We can see the recommendation there on page 67 is to approve this application. We take that vote, and please count.
Yep. Councillor Meyer Baker. Councillor Peter Black.
Against.
Councillor Phil Downing.
For.
Councillor Alan Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Mary Jones.
Against.
Councillor Mary Jones.
Against. Can you hear me? No. Against.
No, against, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, I couldn't hear you.
So she shook her head.
I shook my head.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Lewis.
For.
Councillor Richard Lewis is gone.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Mark Tribe.
Against.
Councillor Mike White. Councillor Andrew Williams.
For.
Councillor Paul Lloyd.
And for.
That's carried. Chair. That's
Yep.
7-4.
Thank you. And then,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Move on to the next item you find on your agenda is the application for the Glen Vivian. How are we going to handle this? So Steve, you with us now?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay.
Members, can you hear Steve?
Can you hear me? Hello? Testing. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Is this going to be okay?
I can hear you, Steve, but I'm
Yeah,
at home.
Okay, can the people in the room hear me okay? Hello?
We can hear him now.
Okay. Can you hear?
Steve, I think it'd probably be easier for me to present it in the room.
Okay, that sounds good, Ian. And if there's any questions, I
Okay,
can cover those.
thank you. Okay, sorry about this, folks. Okay then.
Yeah.
Ready, folks?
Right, I can't see it on the screen now.
All right.
Okay, this one. Great. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, due to the IT problem, Steve was going to present this, so I'll give a brief presentation. This application is before you today because the council of the applicants is for listed building consent, and as a result, it has to be brought to the planning committee for determination. So the application seeks proposed new stainless steel signage to the north and northeast and southeast elevations of the Glen Vivian. So the plan on the screen identifies the areas where the signage will be sited, and also has some pictures of the elevations in which the signage will be erected. So the signage takes the form of the stainless steel lettering. You can see the elevations there with the samples of where the signage would be erected on the building and how it would look. The placemaking and heritage officers considered the application and considers the development of the proposed adverts to be acceptable. The impact on the listed building is considered to be acceptable and does not result in any harm to the visual character of the building.
It would preserve and enhance the historic character of the building, and on that basis, the application is considered to comply with relevant guidance and policies. This is the other elevation showing the signage on, and again, as I say, is considered to be acceptable and complies with guidance. The application does have to be referred to CADU, but the recommendation to CADU is that the authority propose to grant listed building consent subject to any directions from CADU. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any member? Been moved. I got no other hands up anyway, so it's been moved. To see the recommendation is to approve. We can take that vote, and if we like, please.
Yeah, Councillor Baker. Councillor Peter Black.
4.
Phil Downing.
4.
Alan Jeffrey.
4.
Mary Jones.
Yes,
4.
4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Mike Lewis.
4.
Rich Lewis gone. Mark Tribe.
4.
Mike White.
4.
Andrew Williams.
4.
Paul Light.
Oh.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Yeah, well, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then we move on to the next item. There is the application for the Guildhall.
Thank you, Chair. For the reasons given previously, again, this application is before committee as the applicants of the council. The proposal seeks listed building consent for works to the roof of the Guildhall. So it's re-roofing works to the rear of the clock tower roof. The works proposed are the renewal of the roof covering. A heritage impact assessment has been submitted with the application where the proposed works have been detailed, and also the impact on the heritage significance of the Guildhall. The applications, again, some photographs to show the area in which the works would take place. You can see the red markings on the photograph. There's some photographs taken on the roof, again, identifying the area where the works would take place. The proposal is being considered by the placemaking and heritage officer. Placemaking officer and heritage officer is satisfied with the works. The clock tower and entrance hall are key elements of the building, and this work will help to preserve those features. The application, again, there's further photographs showing perhaps a more detailed photograph of where the works would take place. The impact on the building is considered to be acceptable and will not result in any harm to the visual character or affect any historic fabric. Again, the application does have to be referred to CADU, but the position of the authority is that the application would be approved by the authority, subject to any directions from CADU. So, Chairman, just reminded by Gareth, there was an update circulated on the report. Yeah. Comments were received, offering no objection to the application.
Yeah, that, yeah. Thank you, Ian. I've got one of the local members here, but did you want to speak?
I've simply got no objections on how to bring it done. It'd be pleasure to walk into the hall with it. Seeing all the so that would be a clear advantage to it. But no, certainly got no objections to that, and I support the works to be carried out.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Down.
I was just going to mention the river as well. That we've seen many times on a heavy rain. The only thing is, why is this taking so long? Because we've had a leak there for, I would say, a number of years.
Yeah.
And I don't know what damage is done between here and the roof side of it. Why is it taking so long?
Yeah, so you can find out, you know.
Like my understanding is the works to the roof are part of a wider phased renovation of the Guildhall roof, and this is the phase they're currently on at the moment. I see Steve on the screen is nodding, so I think my understanding is correct.
Okay,
thank you, Reid. Okay, I've got no other hands up to speak. You can see the recommendation there again is to approve. So take that vote.
Yeah,
again,
Councillor Baker, Peter Black, Phil Downing, Alan Jeffrey, Mary Jones,
yes.
Mike Lewis, Mark Tribe, Mike White, Andrew Williams, and Paul Lloyd.
And for-
Unanimous again, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And our final item there, item 7, is the development of national significance decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief overview, really. This report's for information following receipt of 2 decisions from Welsh Government. So developments of national significance are for large infrastructure projects. They're not determined by the council. They're considered by an inspector from PEDU, who in some cases will be able to determine the application, in other cases makes a recommendation to the Welsh ministers. In both these cases, the Welsh ministers made the final decision. Both schemes are for solar farms. Having considered the inspector's report, the minister considered they were acceptable and as a result approved the developments. Attached to the report is the detailed sort of decision, so that it sets out the issues that were considered by the inspector and the conclusions reached. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Nigel, for information and such. So thank you all, folks, and thank you for your patience this afternoon. Cheers. Thank you.